democracy has felt so stable in this country and so consistent with markets, too, is because for about 200 years, the country has been dominated economically, politically, and culturally by a white majority, with white always being a moving target. And that's, maybe deeply invidious. All these things can happen, but it's politically very stable because all the smaller, there are plenty of tribes, there are plenty of smaller groups. Their voices are all just kind of suppressed and silenced. What's happened in the last 30 or so years is really two things. First, this massive demographic shift. Many more immigrants, but also not coming from Europe anymore, but from Asia, where my own parents came from, Latin America, Africa, the Caribbean countries. So whites, for the first time in our national history, are on the verge of no longer being a majority. And what that means is that really, for the first time in our history, every group feels threatened. It's not just minority groups who feel threatened, but whites now feel threatened. There are these amazing surveys that show, 67% of working class whites feel that whites are more discriminated against than minorities. It's not just Muslims and Jews who feel threatened. Christians feel threatened. You can hear that in the rhetoric. And, with the Me Too movement, it's, with Trump in the office, women feel threatened, but now men feel threatened, straights and gays. So when people feel threatened, that's when they get more insular, more defensive, more tribal. That's one part of it. The other thing that's happened is that, and I think a lot of talk of white supremacy and, just kind of covers this up, but another massive shift that we've had is because of the reduction in geographic mobility and social mobility, we have a new cultural divide. Basically, class, or it's actually more like an educational difference, has split America's white majority. So kind of white-on-white resentment in this country is one of the deepest tribal divisions. It's almost like it's almost like an ethnic divide, actually, in the sense that there's a very little interaction and intermarriage between the whites who are more coastal, multicultural, living in cities, and whites living in the center of the country. So the result now, what I've said is we are starting to have these dynamics that historically were much more associated with developing countries, like populist movements with, fueled by demagogues stoking racially, kind of racial/economic anxieties. And then you see elites backlashing against the popular side of democracy. You see the erosion of trust in our institutions and electoral outcomes. So in some ways, we're kind of getting a taste of our own medicine. We're seeing that democracy doesn't always produce results we like. And maybe this is something that Rich was saying. I tend to think that's why you see so much dialogue about we're in the grip of authoritarianism, because we don't, even if Hillary won the popular vote and with the Russian meddling, there's just still no question that Donald Trump is the product of democracy. And so was Milosevic in the former Yugoslavia. He was elected. And so was Hitler, and so was Hugo Chavez. So in some ways, we're starting to, get a taste of our own medicine. It's coming home to roost.